Hello, Lenawee County, and thank you for joining me. Adrian Public Schools hosted a public forum yesterday to review the proposed community recreational facility and discuss whether to include a smaller scale pool in the project. Here's the presentation delivered by Adrian Public Schools Superintendent Nate Parker.
Thank you all for being here. Tonight, what we're going to try to do is review the original bond proposal that we talked about for quite some time, the past 18 months. Reviewing, informing, getting community feedback, look at the why of that original proposal, and then look at why we are now talking about possibly adding the pool to this proposal. And then we definitely want to collect some feedback and get your questions. We're going to have you work in small groups to do that and fill out some feedback forms, and then have you report out so the rest of the room can hear what those what that feedback is. Just so I can get a feel as I look around. It's important, I think, for me to know how much you knew about the original proposal. Not necessarily how much, but so if you've been to one of these before, or you were keeping up with the media reports and the press releases of where we were going with this proposal. So the original proposal, you had a pretty good idea what that looked like. Just raise your hand if you would, please. Okay. So relatively half the room. So that kind of helps me to know the amount of time I may spend on what that original proposal was. So as we look at our strategic planning in the district, for a long time we've said we want to produce students who are leaders in academics, the arts, and athletics. And as we've done that, we've created strategic plans around all of those areas, including facilities being one of those. And behind each one of those dreams is a strategic plan for how we're moving to get that, to give our students more and more opportunities to achieve that goal, that dream. And you can see here our athletics, we provide, our academics, we provide opportunities for our kids to go compete and use what they're learning in the classroom in real world situations and competitions. We have an outstanding arts department. Our fine arts have been a point of pride for a long time. We've really expanded that down into the elementaries, and our athletics as well with our athletic game plan continues to show results in a lot of different ways. In a big way is with our student athletes. We have a lot of students who are now academic all-state. We have teams that are academic all-state. Those are points of pride. We may have a few that are here tonight that are academic all-state as well. So again, all of those areas have strategic plans behind them. And when we started the facilities part of this plan, there was a survey that went out to stakeholders, to the community, to parents. And two of those questions in particular, in terms of space and functionality, what areas of the school do you feel are the most lacking? Now, kudos to our maintenance department and the plans that we've had. As you see, 45% said they had no concerns about the facilities. And so that's always good to see. Followed quickly by, at 18%, recreational spaces and then learning spaces. So recreational spaces came up in that. Likewise, if you could add one major facility in the next 5 to 10 years, what would you like to see added? 41% said STEM labs, and then the next highest was additional athletic and recreational spaces. We then had some open-ended questions. Also asked those 3 questions right there. In collecting the results, you can see the top 3 there: playgrounds, athletic and recreational spaces or facilities, and then some of the normal HVAC upgrades. So if you followed the press releases, we're replacing the high school boiler through an energy bond that does not cost the taxpayers. We've got another grant money from a grant we got from Eagle to also update some of that. So we're constantly looking for ways to make sure we're keeping our facilities updated without having to go to the taxpayers unless we have to, and we've been able to do that. Playgrounds, we've invested from general fund into all of our playgrounds to get those back up to par. And again, playgrounds can always be better. They're very expensive, but we have saw that ask, and all of our elementaries have gotten in touch with the playgrounds. As I said, number 1 here was STEM labs because of a generous gift from the Mooley family, as well as the district matching that $100,000 we got as a gift, and the Adrian Schools Educational Foundation raising another, hopefully $100,000 for that. All of our elementary schools will have STEM labs in them for the start of the next school year. Through the 2016 bond, Springbrook Middle School has incredible spaces. The Adrian High School has incredible spaces. Through that survey and that facilities part, the community did note that the elementary schools could use some of those. So we're excited to be moving along in that direction. When we look at our strategic plans and all the core priorities, academics is the lesson plan, arts the playbill, the athletic game plan, and the facilities plan, we see that in most of these, facilities is a part of that. In additional athletic spaces, that Maple mindset we talk about with the athletic game plan about what our students can do, those student athletes of class and character, those are all important. But all of our strategic plans talk about facilities, and you know, the bottom one is, you know, explore other grants, bond exploration, and wish list for some of those facilities that we often talk about. We have conversations about them in the community. When does it become a reality? When is it something we put a plan in place to see if we can do those things? So from all of that, as I said, this is 18 now, maybe almost 24-month process of looking at all these things, some additional community forums, talking to the community, talking to our parents, talking to our students. This is where we arrived with a plan to put a new community recreational facility. This is Adrian High School. This is the existing PAC and gym. This is currently that back parking lot. That is where, through all that process and analysis, we came to would be the best location for that facility. We're losing parking there, but we're adding it back where the old tennis courts were, which is just a gravel lot now, and along the side of the pool, which we actually pick up a few spaces for replacing what we've lost. That is where the final location was determined would be best for a lot of different reasons, and that's what we were looking at for the location. Height-wise, it's not a dome, it's a steel frame building. It's about 10 foot higher than our existing gym. We also did have some separate meetings for the people in the neighborhoods there, and I've walked and knocked on a few doors and just to talk to them about that location and get their feedback on it as well, because I think that's important, that we're trying to engage the people who are going to live next to there. What would it look like on the inside? Here's the schematic drawing. You see there's about 60 yards of turf. There is a track around it, and you know, this we've heard in many of our community forums, and the feedback is there's nowhere to walk in the wintertime, particularly in the city, so having a track for the community and students is a plus. There would be three basketball courts, and then I'll show you another one that represents this a little bit better, but that's obviously a secure entrance, a secure lobby, locker rooms, a common area, a fitness center, and then that's storage up at the other side of that. That was the original plan, the original proposal we were looking at. These are just some stock photos of what that could look like with the track. You know, the hard courts, volleyball, basketball, tennis, pickleball, all of the above they could be used for hosting recreational tournaments, travel tournaments, and a lot of other opportunities there for the community and our students in our rec department. This is just a little bit to show it one more time in a little bit different format. More than anything, this kind of shows how that front would be set up with a secure entrance, the common area, and then the locker rooms and the fitness center. That was the original proposal we were looking at to put on the ballot in November. When Siena Heights made their announcement, it was best that we did some more analysis, we see how that may impact the community, see if there are opportunities there before moving forward any further. Just a quick representation of all those slides and where we were and what the plan was to provide this facility for our students and for the community as well. The why of a community rec facility from the school side, obviously additional space. As you know, we partner with the city to run the youth rec department, and most of that takes place in our spaces, in our areas. You know, some city facilities, but most of it is right here. So having that additional space would be a huge advantage for our rec department. I'm just going to show you this. This shows the increase of our recreational numbers of participants in our rec departments over the years since we started that program. And as you can see, those numbers just continue to climb, and as the numbers continue to climb, there's more and more need for space. We have also now started to, basically, we're hosting the rest of the county, which brings in some revenue for us. We did volleyball this last fall. If you came here during a Saturday, if anyone of you were participating in that, you know those spaces were packed. We used Springbrook as well as the high school. We definitely could do more if we had more spaces. We're currently also doing basketball, so there's opportunities there. Practice space for our own teams. We sometimes have teams that don't get out of practice till 9 o'clock at night because we're limited in the space that's available. The dance team and the cheer team, sometimes just because they want to get it after school, they might go over to Michener. The city's worked with us well to let us use the Piotr Center over there, and we need more space. Again, we make it work, we make it happen because that's what we do, but again, that also often means kids are getting out of practice really late. When communities have these facilities, this is a place for the marching band to practice. We host band camp here, often in the summer in August. It's 90, 95 degrees. If they had this opportunity to go in and use the turf. Also, they sometimes practice in the evening after practices get over, so those people in the band who are also athletes can still be there. They're pushing the darkness, and if it's raining and cold, to have this place to go inside for the marching band would be a good advantage for them. Currently, we go to Adrian College for tennis practice, and it's a great facility, but we're competing with everybody else. This would not be a competition place for our tennis teams. However, it would be a place for them to practice. It would be a place for them to also be able to work on their game. So there's extra spaces there, both for our students, and we have had adults talk to us about opportunities for tennis in the wintertime when you can't do it outside. Off-season workout spaces. I think there's a lot of things, and I'm not going to read the entire slide to you, but I think one of the biggest pieces here that we talk about is this year-round training opportunities for all of our students. As we know, we have about 65% of our students are on free and reduced lunch, who are in poverty. Some students can go get on a travel team, and they travel to Toledo or they travel to Saline. And it's not so much the competitions, I think, that are the biggest advantage. It's the extra practice. It's the extra training. Even in the winter, you have somewhere you can go and do those things inside. Many of our students, many of our kids can't necessarily afford that. So if we could have this facility here and provide that advantage to them, we're giving them some of the same opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I think that's a big piece as we look at that rec component, feeding into our varsity programs, giving the kids in this community the same opportunities that people who are able to afford those travel programs. I think that's one of the biggest pieces for us of why this is an important thing to try to do. So from the community side, obviously an affordable option for community health and wellness. Again, that winter time, even being able to get out and walk, to be able to do some cardio and some fitness. We know the city did a great job of putting pickleball courts out at Heritage Park. In the wintertime, it's pretty hard to play pickleball out there, so here would be another opportunity. Again, that health and wellness. Pickleball is fun to play, but it's also a good cardio, and it's a good thing for people to be able to stay active. Again, the tennis courts, rec opportunities, leagues. This would give us the ability to host in the city of Adrian recreational and travel tournaments. There's one parent I know who is a tennis parent, and she just wants a place to train for her kids. They got to go everywhere to do that. But we also know we have families and students who are driving to Brighton and Saline and in different places where we would be able to host some of this here. And we've set this up with a pro forma, which I'll talk about in a little bit, where we don't have to be slamming every weekend in order to cover this. But we do have to pick certain weekends and a certain amount of weekends out of the year where we would host tournaments to help cover the revenue, but also to provide that opportunity for our kids and our families to stay right here and do those things rather than leaving the community to do it. Event rental, obviously when you're bringing people in for travel tournaments and hosting tournaments, there's some economic impact to that, more visitors to the community, and I think the placemaking concept of, what do people look like when they're looking for a place to live? We want more people, both from the school side and the community side, to want to choose to live in Adrian. This is one more of those things that we can tell them, hey, we have these facilities. We can do these things. We've talked about the idea, a lot of communities have these. Why not Adrian? Why couldn't we do this if we can find a way to do this for our kids and our community to have this a space like this? Why wouldn't we make that try? And that's what we've been trying to do for the last 18 to 24 months. And again, ultimately, we're going to ask the voters if this is something they want us to do, and that'll be the end. But it's at the point we need to ask the question. How often would it be open? When would it be available to the community? As you know, our kids are in school from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's a great opportunity for this to be available for the community to use. And then from, say, 2 to 5, 2 to 6, we need it for our rec programs, for our athletic programs. We need it for that. And then that still leaves that 6 to 9 window, 6 to 8 window, whatever it might be, where it could be open to the community again. Maybe by appointment, maybe there's opportunities. We spoke with Jeremiah a little bit about could there be more opportunities for adult rec. Currently, there's not enough spaces for that. It seems is the big barrier for that. Again, so there's all those opportunities. But I think it's important. We want it to be available to the community for a large chunk of the day. And that, as you can see, that 8 to 2, and then when we need it, for our kids, it would obviously that 2 to 6 period, 3 to 6. Different times of the year would be different. When it's nice outside, we might not have anybody in there. But then on Saturdays, 2 to 6, the idea being in the morning is when we would, if we're going to host tournaments, we're going to run a rec programs, that's when that would be. Now, if there's a basketball tournament or a soccer tournament or whatever that might be, that doesn't mean the track isn't available. That could still, people could still come and walk on the track. So just because we're hosting a tournament doesn't mean it would be shut down at that time. And then Sunday, looking at 5 hours. Again, some of that is proposed, flexible, those kind of things, but we've got to be able to, on our pro forma, we got to lock down the time so that we know how much revenue we need to raise. The cost, and this is the original proposal again, we were looking at 25 to 27.5 million. The pro forma that we worked out was 300 and 350,000 annually to operate it. That would be a millage of 0.75 mils over 20 years, or 27.5 million is what that 0.75 mils would raise. If your home is $200,000, that means half of the value, 0.75 mils for every $1,000, it would be about $75 a year increase, or $625 a month, or 21 cents per day. Again, that was the original proposal. In the original ballot language, again, this is the original language that was going to be in November. This is probably going to change based on where we go with some of this, or it could be the same. Basically, erecting, furnishing, and equipping a community recreational facility, partially remodeling, furnishing, and refurnishing, and equipping and re-equipping Adrian High School, and preparing, developing, and improving the community recreational facility at the high school site. So that, again, when we go through this process, as you know, we've had some polling going on. We've got this meeting tonight, another one next Monday. We will come back to you with what the exact language will be, but I'm just going over what the original proposal was. This slide, I like to use this because this shows where we stand in terms of our bonded debt for the school district. After the 2016 bond, we were up to 7 mils, which isn't even represented. We were up to 7 mils. And essentially 7 mils is considered the cap. You can go up to 8, but it costs more. It's more complicated to do, but most districts try to stay at that 7 mils. Since 2016, you can see we're now below 5 mils. That's a factor of the taxable value going up, so we don't have to levy as many mils, so we're at 5 mils. So adding that 0.75 still keeps us under 6 mils. So we're not leveraged. We're not all the way maxed out to where we could be. And then as you can see, in 2034, we retire the 2004 bond. So some more mills come off. This would be coupled with the 2016 bond, so out in 2046, 20 years from now, those would be retired as well. So again, I think it's just important to understand where we stand as a district with our bonded debt. We are not leveraged. This 0.75 does not take us all the way up to the limit. We also can see where those other bonds are going to retire, which would give us more leverage. So that brings us to tonight. We are talking about do we want to add a pool to this? Do we want to consider putting a pool as part of this proposal? And obviously that comes from recently the announcement at the commission meeting that because of the ongoing repairs to Bowen Pool and the age of the pool, nearly 50 years old now, that it will not be able to open next summer. There's got to be some exploration. When that decision was made, obviously, knowing that we've kind of got a bond teed up, we've been talking about a bond, people reaching out, the conversation becomes, is it possible that a pool could become part of this bond proposal? And again, it's been important to us throughout this process that we engage the community, we listen to the community. That was a question that was asked, so we're gonna look at it. We're gonna explore it, and ultimately, I'm going to talk about what that may or may not mean, and then we've got to make a decision on what that final proposal is going to look like. These are conceptual drawings. As you can see, one location is at the Boys and Girls Club. And I have talked to Sarah Harriman over there. She's aware of this, and we've had conversations with her. Again, there's benefits and advantages to that proposal. There's concerns about the cost, because that's a lot more construction over there. Can that come in at something that we can put on the ballot and afford? The other possible, if this becomes too much, is here's the current facility. We could add that pool right here, and it's, at this point it looks like a community pool. You can see it's much smaller than what Bowen Pool is, but it's a community pool. There's a splash pad there. There are some lane swim. The reason this is less costly, and you can probably figure this out, is same locker rooms would be used, same parking. They've got to run utilities anywhere, electric, all that kind of stuff. So all that is still there. It's just now they're adding a pool rather than a pool house in additional utilities in those items. So hoping to have an estimate on that in the next week or two. They're working to get that done to see where that will stand. What we do know is the Boys and Girls Club site will be more costly because of the additional pool house and the parking and all of those things. Will it still come in under where we could do it? It's a possibility. We're still considering that. Now, what would the cost of that be? And this is basically, obviously, you could pass a millage for a lot more mills than 0.95. This is what we pulled because we do feel this is, going from 0.75 to 0.95 is only about, obviously it's not a lot. However, you start getting up over a mill, and if that is, that is going more and more towards the pool, that's less and less a school bond. So what we are, I guess, in our conversations, what we would be comfortable with is raising it to 0.95 if that allowed us to get a pool as part of this proposal. And again, in conversations with Chad and the city, that the city would cover the cost of the operation and the maintenance of that facility. Again, just running through the math quickly, on a home value of $200,000, 0.95 would then mean $95 per year increase, $8 a month, 26 cents a day. And back to that, that's not Bowen Pool, obviously. It's a reduced footprint. However, to hope to get under that $35 million at 0.95, we know that it can't be the full Bowen Pool footprint with all of those pieces. It is a community pool. There is some lane swim there. Those are the opportunities. This is one other thing that we've brainstormed, we've talked about. At that 0.95 or that 0.75, would we consider a much reduced facility, basically behind Springbrook, that just gives, basically that's what the school needs? Would that reduced amount be enough to put the pool at the Boys and Girls Club or a larger pool? Again, trying to have the different options there and so that we are considering everything, but ultimately we've got to come to something that we're comfortable with putting on the ballot that we think people can support and gives us what we need in terms of that community recreational facility and a pool if that is possible. Like I said, this is just one more brainstorm, one more possibility of how we could get there with the facility that meets the needs of the school and the pool as well. Whether that's a good idea or not, it remains to be seen. Very quickly, just run you through some of these. So, this election would not just be the city of Adrian. This is the Adrian Public School District, and as you can see, it lists out all of the different people. Now, the city of Adrian, everyone in the city of Adrian is an Adrian Public School District voter. Adrian Township, most of the township is. There are some little slivers that might be Raisin or Blissfield. Not Blissfield, Raisin or Madison Township. Then we got Dover, and the rest of them go down lower and lower. But all of those townships have some voters who will vote for an Adrian Public Schools bond. Not everybody in those townships does, but there are slivers. You can see our district map is pretty crazy how that's drawn and where it goes all over the place. So again, I just like to get that out there because even with the last one, some people would say, well, I can't vote because I live in the township. Well, you probably can vote if you're in the township. I'm in Madison Township, I can't vote. Well, what's your address, you might be able to vote in this. So again, just wanted that out there, that this isn't just the city of Adrian voting. This would be the school district. What are we looking at in terms of cost for residents, for taxpayers, for people who live in the school district? Just quickly, we looked at 2 other market rates, $816 a year for a similar facility. For a family, $900 market rate number 2. We really want to make this affordable because people are going to be paying taxes on it already. We want to make it affordable. However, we are going to have some maintenance and staffing costs, so we need to charge something to at least generate some revenue. $150 over the course of the year for a family obviously is well below market rate. So yes, they will also be paying taxes for it, so that's why we think it needs to be lower. We got to charge something in order to make sure that we can cover costs. Very quickly, Dan Pena, our CFO, is here. He works with some people. Dan, where'd you go? To put together a pro forma that looks at how would we generate revenue, what would our costs be. I'm not going to dive into the details on that. If you have more questions about that, we can definitely get that to you or meet with you about it. But essentially, these are real numbers looking at what we could do, how many tournaments would we have to host to raise enough revenue to cover our costs. So we put some together. The Rec All-Star Volleyball, that's what I referenced in the fall. That's already going on. We know we've already raised revenue similar to that for that. A Rec Basketball League. We've already hosted some wrestling tournaments, some My Way tournaments that generate a great deal of fun. So essentially, like I said, we don't want to have to run big tournaments every weekend. But we know we're going to have to pick X amount of weekends to cover those costs and generate that revenue. Here's what we put together as far as what the cost would be. Obviously, we've got to anticipate staffing costs, utilities, maintenance, on down, around $333,000. The pro forma we put together, we're confident of the revenue we can generate can meet those costs. And again, I want to credit Dan. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I can add to this, just so everybody knows, we did not pull these numbers out of thin air. This was conversation with other facilities around the state, schools and recreational facilities like what we're looking at. So how these numbers were derived came from those conversations. So we did have lots of conversation to make sure that our numbers are legit and accurate and as well planned out as possible. So I want to make sure to call it out.
Thanks, Dan.
Next steps include refining the ballot language and determining whether the pool will be included before the final proposal submission. I'm Brian Vish for WLEN, Lenawee's local news station. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.